Hello students, I am Gunjan Malik Minocha, Assistant Professor in Institute of Hotel and Tourism Management, MDU Rohtak. Welcome to EPG Pathshala. We are studying the paper Managing Culture and Diversity, and today we will study the module HR Strategies for Managing Cross-Cultural Differences. The outcomes of this module would be that students will be able to understand the concept of culture and the cross-cultural dimensions, and also they will be able to understand about how to manage cultural diversity at workplace. Let's start with introduction. As we all know that the pace of technological changes is increasing, the organization strategies need to be changed as per the external changes occurring. Matching the need of the organization and understanding the gap, HR department need to focus on the HR strategies. Due to rapid change across the demographic pattern of the organization, the HR strategies need to highlight the area which needs their attention on the new workforce. As the workforces are rapidly changing across the organization as per the demand of the external market, a study on workforce 2020 mentioned in their studies that nowadays a diverse cultural workforce is increasing. These workforce need more attention as handling issues and conflicts pertaining to cultural differences being the major issues which need to be handled with care in the organization. These cultural diverse organizations need more focused HR strategies and an adaptable culture which was highlighted in the study. As a demographic shift, HR strategies need to be in line with the accustomed to diverse labor workforce from internal and external environment. Business strategies are defined as the way it emphasizes on vision and the mission of the firm to achieve their goal through better HR strategic planning. The need of HR is to change their role and focus on investing their time and energy on understanding the organizational need and developing the employee through developing a conducive climate in which all can grow and develop. This is the right time that HR evolve their new strategies and become partner in organizational growth by understanding the need of business. The HR has to focus more on people development through understanding the cultural values and creating a common culture which helps in reducing the cultural differences, allowing the adaptation of foreign culture and developing a mixed culture that can be converted into blood that flows in the veins of the business. Now let's study the culture and the cross-cultural dimensions. Culture can be defined as a cumulative, crystallized and quasi-stable shared lifestyle of people reflected in the inclination of some state of values which are predispositions towards several important issues and incident that changes attitudes in the organized ways in relation to certain affairs and rituals in the ways it promotes desired behavior and averting undesirable behavior. The most important aspect of organizational culture is the values it practices. The culture of a society comprises the shared values, the understandings, the assumptions and the goals that are learned from the earlier generations imposed by the present members of a society, and it is passed on also to the succeeding generations. Culture plays a significant role in forming our ways of feeling, thinking and acting. The organization need is to focus on strategies that are met with the developmental aspects of the organizations and convert it into high performing culture by imparting the training and developing a culture bias free environment. Developmental aspects of culture. The need is to focus on development of policies for authority, departments and staff at all the level regarding culture code of conducts. Second is focusing on development of knowledge leaders that focuses on continuous improvement. Third is individual development through proper guidance. Fourth, individual development in developing their goals that are pressure free. Individual skill development and capacity building program. Sixth is culture helps in development of positive cultural environment and respect for each other culture. Then it focuses on valuing the culture difference and rewarding for good behavior at the workplace. Performance needs to be monitored and evaluated on the basis of objectives designed for individuals and supported by their leaders. Ninth, people-focused organization. And the last is compensating for goal achievement and rewarding for team learning behavior. Culture and cross-cultural dimensions. Meanwhile, the organizational cultures have their own features that are mentioned above. The key notion of intercultural dynamics provides perceptive and genuine recommendation for individuals and organizations to help them build and improve intercultural communication and cooperation. Well, as an HR manager, one should focus on representing the strategic plan as per the diverse culture in the organization and meet the goals. Affirmative action is focusing on encouraging firms to recruit new employees with diversity so as to enhance the creativity and ideas, the culture within the organization. It also emphasizes on promotion opportunities to more diverse individuals. When a person from one culture communicates with a person from another culture, they are engaging in cross-cultural communication. Differing national cultures have an impact on strategic business objectives, corporate culture, and the way companies operate. In the worldwide sense, cultures differ from nations and regions. Built on experimental studies, Hofstede developed the cultural dimensions theory to explain national culture differences. The major cultural differences could be categorized into two major dimensions: Geert Hofstede and Fons Trompenaars. Both approaches imply a set of cultural dimensions along with dominant value systems. These value systems are affecting individuals, thinking, feeling, reacting, and these leads to modification of behavior in the organizations and establishment in conventional ways. The Universalism Dimension. The Universalism Dimension that follows rules and regulations as apply locally and universally, while in particularism dimension emphasis more on relationship amongst each other. The HR strategies for various functions can be affected due to this dimension. It may affect in terms of recruitment and promotion policies in different countries. The neutral dimension. As the smileys display, the neutral dimension focuses on less emotional orientation of relationship. It may cause difficulty in taking decision and may create conflict at the workplaces due to not able to understand human touch approach. While affective dimension is emotional orientation on a greater side of relationship, they more focus on relationship maintenance at the workplace or any contracts. Achievement dimension. Again, the picture displays these achievement dimensions focus on the status, influence based on the person's achievement. In an ascription dimension, they focus on people assigned to their status on the basis of class, age, gender, etc. Culture dimensions on the basis of similarities. Relations between people, motivational orientation, attitude towards time. Hofstede elaborated on differences between individualism and collectivism, while Trompenaars discussed about the dimensions like universalism versus particularism, relationship, and how HR can focus and manage policies after understanding various patterns of relationship among people at workplace. Motivational orientation. Hofstede depicted that there are three dimensions: masculinity versus femininity, uncertainty avoidance, and power distance, while Trompenaars concentrated this difference with the neutral versus affective dimension in the terms of understanding the pattern of authority and pattern of organizational structure possible at the workplaces depending on the cultural differences. Third is attitude towards time. Hofstede distinguished between a long-term versus a short-term orientation, while Trompenaars identified two dimensions: achievement versus ascription. Now, the Hofstede 5 dimensions of national culture, which includes power distance, individualism versus collectivism, long-term orientation, uncertainty avoidance, and masculinity versus femininity. Let's have a detailed explanation for all these. Number 1 dimension is power distance. Power distance stands for the extent to which the less powerful members of institutions within a country expect and accept that power is distributed unequally. Second dimension, individualism versus collectivism. Individualism stands for a culture in between individuals are lost and independent for decision making. Collectivism stands for a society in which people protect each other in exchange for unquestioning loyalty. The third dimension, masculinity versus femininity. These dimensions of Hofstede's work is related to values, in which masculine cultures, that is male dominant values, are related to understanding country's culture, where male dominance is positively supported, while the dimension of feminine cultures, where female values focus on relationship among people, concern for others to plan accordingly for various policies at the workplace. The fourth dimension, which is uncertainty avoidance. Uncertainty avoidance is the extent to which the members of a culture feel threatened by the unknown situations. And the fifth dimension, which is long-term and short-term orientation. Now, this fifth dimension can be said to deal with the asset regardless of truth. Values associated with long-term orientation are carefulness, determination, and values associated with short-term orientation are respect for the customs, satisfying social responsibilities, and protecting identity of the individuals. Now let's have a view at the dimensions of cross-cultural differences. The Globe Research Project Select Findings displays the example of the countries for each factor. Now these are the four factors: assertiveness, performance orientation, future orientation, and humane orientation. And we have divided the countries in least, medium, and most. So if we talk about assertiveness, Sweden is in least, Egypt is in medium, and Spain is most in assertiveness. Then Russia is least in performance orientation, Sweden is medium in performance orientation, and USA is at the most in performance orientation. Similarly for the other countries. International HR strategy in global context. The IHRM, the International HRM, mainly emphasizes management of people and cultural difference by developing a focused HR strategic plan. The development of the global marketplace and global organizations has been influenced by the workforce mobility. In international business, the underlying impact of culture is evident in the way people interact with and manage others. Well, as noted by Adler and Gheder in 1990, organizations have to follow very different HRM policies and practices according to the relevant stage of evolution. It can be multinational, global, international, or transnational stage. Now, multinational stage. This type of organization responds to the needs to exploit the national diversity and recognize it. For example, the customer's tastes, needs of technology based on local conditions and national culture. This type of organization has a strong presence of national culture, culture difference, and respond to the national diversity. The global. Here the organization exploits the advantages of centralized global scale operations based on company and HR strategies globally prevailing. For example, IBM, Google. The international organization, it is ideal type of organization. It focuses on learning and sharing, but core competencies are adopted from the parent company and locally adopted other competencies. For example, Procter & Gamble. Now the transnational companies. This type of organization are locally responsive and they focus on adapting core competencies based on local environment that are highly efficient, shared for higher adaptability by customers and workforce in the organization. For example, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Nestle, which shows the global integration. Multinational. Now this type of organization responds the need to exploit the national diversity and recognize it. For example, the customer's tastes, the need of technology based on the local conditions and national culture. Then global. Now the international HR strategy in global context has been displayed in the form of this diagram, in which multinational strategy says highly decentralized and locally responsive, global highly centralized and focused on efficiency. International, which is centralized, focused on learning and sharing. And transnational is locally responsive, highly efficient learning and sharing. It has been adopted from Bartley and Ghoshal. International HR strategy in global context. According to Harris and Brewster, referred to this as global versus local dilemma, the issue being the extent to which operating units across the world are to be differentiated and at the same time integrated, controlled and coordinated. Two factors that influence the choice of global versus local HR policies and practices in multinational firms are known as exogenous and endogenous. Now, exogenous means it depends on the external environment and they modify their culture accordingly, and endogenous means modification of the culture of the workplace based on the policies of the organization of the parent company. They suggest that the alternative strategies are the global approach in which the company's culture predominates and the HRM is centralized and relatively standardized, which is called an ethnocentric policy, or decentralized approach in which HRM responsibility is devolved to subsidiaries. International HR strategy in global context, again in the form of a diagram, local responsiveness from low to high and global efficiency from low to high. So in international, we have lesser local responsiveness and lesser global efficiency. In multinational, we have very high local responsiveness but less global efficiency. In global, we have very high global efficiency but less local responsiveness. And transnational, both the aspects, global efficiency and local responsiveness, are on the higher version. International HR strategy in global context. The purpose of HRM and strategic human resource management is to improve the way that the human resources are managed strategically within the organizations, that is through universalistic paradigm assumed by the organization. HRM and SHRM, they are universal approaches to manage the people and develop them for organizational growth. HRM as practiced by multinational organizations is called as international HRM, and that states international HR policies will deal with the extent to which there should be convergence or divergence in the HR practices adopted in the overseas subsidiaries or units. These will have to take into account the differences in employment law, the character of the labor market, the different employee relation processes, and any culture differences in the ways in which the people are being treated. The situation in which the same trends are being visible in different nations, but they may not be getting more alike as depicted as directional convergence. Managing cross-cultural diversity in global scenario through HR strategies. The most difficult and the most challenging task for HR managers is to handle the cross-cultural diversity due to constant change in technology, thereby the demographic workforce entering at faster pace in organization such as multinational, global, international and transnational. HR strategies are gradually considering the needs of proper way of dealing with the cultural dimensions and differences. It is the responsibility of the HR managers to implement the strategies to keep the diversity difference issues sorted out at a place. Thus, it is important to understand as HR manager what is cultural diversity. It is based on cross-cultural competence depicted as an ability to shift the perspective and behavior in and out of cultural world views. This has been stated by Bennett in 1986. Understanding knowledge, developing communication ties. It may require hiring acquisition managers who have considerable cultural intelligence and invest in cross-cultural training for organization members. Managing cross-cultural diversity in global scenario through HR practices. Now, as the picture is displaying, there are certain culture differences when we communicate. Like, we must be bothering, why didn't he shake my hand? We must be bothering, what now? Should I give him my card? Or she's a bit close. Mutual understanding of different culture at the workplaces. Respecting different culture at the workplace, developing a proper understanding of culture and recognizing it as a part of work culture, and the mutual trust need to be developed among the employees regarding developing a cooperative culture. Value the cultural differences at the workplace. Acceptance of cultural differences without any judgment. Then, relationship building through maintaining culture differences at the workplace. It's all about relationship building through understanding and simplification of the complicated and demanding relationship behavior in different cultural conditions. Then one also needs to ignore the cultural differences at the workplace if you want to be successfully manage the cross-cultural diversity. In this, the HR manager reaches a stage where he needs to ignore the differences in the cultures and focus on developing a feel of our way is the only way, as it is also practiced in parochial type of organizations. Lack of knowledge of diversity prevents effective management of cultural differences. So this step may have positive or negative impact depending upon the situation and countries where these strategies are being applied. Minimizing the cultural differences. In this stage, the HR department recognizes cultural differences as a source of problems. In such organization, the HR managers focus on solving problems based on the cultural differences through attempt of process of socialization and behavior patterns of dominant culture. Focusing on leadership across cultures. Leaders must focus on skills at international communication, culturally sensitive, capable of rapid acceleration, knowledge about cultural and institutional influences, a facilitator of subordinates, intercultural performance, user of cultural synergy, a promoter, user of growing world culture, a commitment to continuous improvement in self-awareness and renewal. Encouraging team trust. Building an environment of safety and trust among the teams is very important. To encourage the feeling of we, not I perspective, teamwork is an essential tool in bridging the cultural divide and building a new identity. The HR strategies to inculcate teamwork can work wonders. Activity based on team and group like TQM. Then another way is by inculcating a learning environment. Deep cultural learning requires that a permanent cross-cultural manager or a cross-cultural management team should be there. Learning environment by involving all can be a good strategy to manage the diversities. The learning modules on cross-cultural sensitization and diversity consciousness can be a good strategy to enhance a strong multicultural environment. Then, the basic HR practices of human resource planning to bring in inclusion. The basic HR practices like HRP should be planned such that diversity across various areas are properly planned and executed. The HR team needs to keep a strong vigil of its present employees pool and plan for recruitment drive, keeping in mind the diversity of the workforce. Then another aspect, motivational strategy, which is unbiased and based on equity. The motivational strategies in the organization, including both monetary and non-monetary, needs to be designed in a manner which encourages inclusion. It should be unbiased. It should be based on the concept of equity. The seniors or the superiors need to be trained to understand the cross-cultural differences and to motivate their team members in a way which encourages all positivity. Performance management system. Now, the PMS system in the organization needs to be designed in a manner which evaluates and assesses cultural tolerance, understands a diversified workforce, sorting out the differences and bringing in the cultural sync. Evaluation on team emphasis and a 360-degree PMS system can be encouraged to conduct the appraisal system in a holistic manner, wherein the differences are minimized and inclusion is brought in. Now, international HRM in managing the cross-culture. It reflects cultural assumptions and values. It exhibits strengths and weaknesses, particularly abroad. It recognizes that the organization's foreign subsidiaries may prefer other ways to manage people. It headquarters willingness to accept the cultural differences, build shared genuine belief that cross-cultural learning. International HRM in managing cross-culture. The adaptation and integration are two parameters that draws attention of cultural difference and how to manage it. Now, type of organization like parochial or monolithic in table 1 stated that cultural diversity has no impact on the organization as they are having dominant nation culture which utilizes denial as cultural orientation and ignore the differences as a strategy by HR personnel. Ethnocentric type of organization, they have a negative impact on organizational diversity as they have very traditional approach and the cultural value system. Therefore, they utilize defense mechanism and they minimize the cultural differences through strict policy of recruitment, and HR personnel try to minimize the cultural differences through hiring ethnocentric approach of recruitment. Pluralistic type of organization, they have a neutral impact as they are more acceptable oriented towards the cultural diversity, and this type of organization acceptance level in terms of modification of policies is very high. The HR personnel utilizes acceptable strategy and they are drawing flexible policy for their employees. This type of synergistic organization shows positive impact in ways to support cultural diversity, and they formalize all the policies and procedures to deal with these cultural differences. They develop a system of practices, processes and procedures to attend to cultural differences through proper adaptation and integrating it through cross-cultural training provided to their employees. Now this diagram of integrative model of culture orientations. We have 4 types of organizations, and then we have the cultural diversity perception, their cultural orientation and their cultural strategy. So if we talk about the parochial or the monolithic types of organization, there is no impact on the cultural diversity. Then if we talk about their cultural orientation, there is a denial and they ignore differences of the cultural strategy. If we talk about the ethnocentric types of organization, there is a negative impact of cultural diversity perception and they have a defense and minimization of cultural orientation and they try to minimize the differences in the culture. In the pluralistic types of organization, they have a neutral impact of cultural diversity. Their cultural orientation is principle of acceptance and their strategy is that they accept the differences in the culture. And the last is synergistic and multicultural types of organization. They have a positive impact of cultural diversity and they adopt a principle of adaptation and integration, and the strategy they use is they manage those cultural differences. Conclusion. As the role of company's HR manager is to support the organization in developing each employees and strengthening the backbone of the organization, the HR department responsibility is to build organization strong culture, develop the core values that can lead to achieve organizational goals. The role of HR managers is getting more challenging due to the uncertain changes that are occurring in the external environment, majorly due to the change in the technological aspects. The workforce demands and competence are changing. Nevertheless, cultural differences are also changing in relation to it. Moreover, as the workforce dynamics changes, the managing cultural differences become even more challenging. The readiness of organization to change their policy and be more adaptable is the solution. HR department is needed to be proactive in determination and prediction of how these cultural differences may affect the consumer reactions and the employees' demands in that run. It is the responsibility of the HR personnel to encourage employees for their involvement and participation for betterment of the organization. They need to create cultural empathy at the workplace to bring out the required performance from the employees. Thank you.